Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Awakenings, the Archetypal Astrology podcast. I'm your host, Jon Waller, and in this episode of Awakenings, what you're going to hear is a somewhat informal conversation between myself, Renn Butler, and Alex Stein, where we just take a look at the transits for the next 6 or so weeks and see what comes up in relation to that. I hope you enjoy listening to it. We had a lot of fun talking it out. So let's just jump straight in. So this is the chart for today, the 8th of July, 2024.
Oh, no. I should have stayed in bed. That's how I use astrology, whether to wear red socks or stay in bed.
I guess some things that stick out straight away worth mentioning is like we're in this conjunction of Saturn and Neptune, which we have been in for a little while now, and will be in for another 2.5 or more years. Obviously, there's also this very exciting conjunction of Mars and Uranus going on, just on the tail end of Sun conjunct Venus. Any thoughts?
Yeah, well, so the other day I was looking at this the trine of Venus to Neptune, right? We got the Venus Neptune trine. It's also still trine Saturn, right? So Venus, Saturn, Neptune, right? So I was thinking about who's got a Venus Saturn Neptune alignment that can really speak to this, because it's always useful, as we know, to look at the charts of people that have these alignments in them, look at their quotes and everything. This is what Renn does so beautifully in his books. And I remember, Renn, you mentioning that Joni Mitchell has that combination of planets. And I forget, I think it's conjunction, maybe a T square. I don't know. It's not a trine, but there was this amazing Joni Mitchell quote that I found that really speaks to the Saturn, Neptune, Venus thing. So I just want to find that right now. So let me read this. So she says, surrounded by this shallow, glossy society, we develop a shallow side too, and we become attracted to fluff. That's reflected in the fact that this culture sets up an addiction to romance based on insecurity. The uncertainty of whether or not you're truly united with the object of your obsession is the rush people get hooked on. I've seen this pattern so much in myself and my friends, and some people never get off that line. But along with developing my superficial side, I always nurtured a deeper longing. So even when I was falling into that trap of that other kind of love, I was hip to what I was doing. I recently read an article in Esquire called The End of Sex that said something that struck me as very true. It said, if you want endless repetition, see a lot of different people. If you want infinite variety, stay with one. What happens when you date is you run all of your best moves and tell all your best stories. And in a way, that routine is a method for falling in love with yourself over and over. You can't do that with a long-time mate because he knows all that old material. With a long relationship, things die and then are rekindled. And that shared process of rebirth deepens the love. It's hard work, though, and a lot of people run at the first sign of trouble. You're with this person and suddenly you look like an asshole to them, or they look like an asshole to you. It's unpleasant, but if you can get through it, you get closer and you learn a way of loving that's different from the neurotic love enshrined in the movies. It's warmer and has more padding to it. So anyway, I just thought that perfectly encapsulates the essence of Venus, Saturn, and Neptune. Why? Right? Venus is the planet that's got to do with love and relationships. Saturn has to do with the challenge and either making things real or facing some kind of blockage or difficulty. And really, it boils down to working through all of the impediments to actually manifesting something that's real, right? Neptune is what connects us to the kind of dream of perfection and the unitive state and that kind of mother's womb kind of blissful connection space. So what she's really pointing to here is the way that we're all kind of looking for that in some way with love, right? We're all kind of looking for that deeper connection, but then we feel we don't have it. So then we try to get this kind of bastardized version of it, the one that's sold to us through Hollywood and all of these expectations that we lay on ourselves and other people. And then we just run from one place to another, right? We can't settle down and actually go deeper because we're just trying to chase that fantasy. This is where the Saturn comes in with the Neptune, right? Saturn drawing out the problematic side of things. But then, like she says, over time, you know, if you choose to do the deeper work, Saturn, then you get to the real place where that what you've been looking for is to be found. So yeah.
That's amazing. And what a profound quote. She's truly a world treasure. I've often thought that the beginning of every high school year, everyone should gather in the gymnasium and the principal should say, these are some of the reasons why human civilization should survive. And she would be right at the top of the list, you know, just is amazing. I love that. Yeah, so the Saturn Neptune that we're in, I think for about 3 more years or a little less, it is a good time to gear down in our psychedelic quests, maybe take fewer risks, do things more carefully, especially if we have, you know, serious emotional problems. You might need more support, more time, you know, to get through the session. Neptune helps to moisten the Saturn archetype, to lubricate it, so it can, the pain and fear associated with Saturn can flow up into consciousness. So that's a good thing. You know, we can't repress our fear and our sorrow. And it tends to kind of permeate every aspect of our day. Well, maybe not every day, but it's like it sort of is a flavor that colors our entire experience for a period of time. A little sadder, a little maybe grimmer, a little more uncertain. And it helps to ground people, bring them back to earth, deflate their spiritual or artistic or new age pretensions. So that's always good. I love this Mars Uranus coming up and applying onto Jupiter. The Mars is I'm actually doing a session next week myself, and I really like the look of that Mars Uranus Jupiter. Though you know, the Jupiter Uranus, I guess it's still within orb, isn't it? I have exciting news for people watching. Last week, you know, I had started this completely other project and suddenly had the idea of an encyclopedia of archetypal astrology, maybe called Planet Talk, Encyclopedia of Archetypal Astrology, with all the brilliant colleagues that you know we now have. This wasn't this wasn't a possibility, you know, 20, 30 years ago. But the transits were Sun, Mercury, Venus, trine Saturn, and Neptune. And it really, you know, fits that as sort of a, you know, the writing project, the fun collaboration, trine Saturn, you know, with the well-defined categories and subcategories. I will just read some of them out in just a sec. And you know, Neptune with this sort of unifying effect of archetypal astrology, showing the common themes within all areas of human endeavor. So just super quickly, so if anyone's out there and wants to contribute to this, let me know. We're going to talk a little bit about the basics of each planetary pair, like, you know, Venus, Saturn, Venus, Uranus, so on. Then there'll be categories for writers and novelists, philosophers, psychologists, spiritual teachers and saints, astrologers, comedians, directors, actors and TV personalities, musicians in different categories, artists, politicians, athletes, and other figures. And then we'll have sections on relationship correlations, like synastry and composite, transit correlations, and archetypal triads, which I'm really excited about. This has never been done. Lists of the triads and who had them, and just short little summaries, and just to begin to build that as a that's something that no one person could do in any kind of satisfying way, but a group of colleagues be able to do something very special. So thanks for letting me share that.
Yeah. Thank you for the idea. Thanks for inviting us to participate, because it is a great idea, and it really is like, the thing, what really distinguishes archetypal astrology, I think the gift that archetypal astrology has as opposed to other forms of astrology, not that it's better or anything. I think every form of astrology has its value, but like what you learn through archetypal astrology is, it's like you learn to taste the flavor of the planets. It's like you learn to really develop a new sense in yourself. And I think that that's the biggest gift that you can get through this kind of practice, because it kind of changes the way your mind digests reality, and so, whereas a lot of forms of astrology, and not that everybody uses it this way, but there's a tendency in one's approach to astrology to kind of, you have your system, and then you kind of look for the way to fit everything into that system. I feel like the best thing that archetypal astrology gets us to do by learning to taste these flavors of the planets is it turns our attention in another direction, be perceiving truly another dimension of reality,
Yeah.
Very cool. And after the Pluto tasting test, you can spit it out in a little bowl,
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I have my own little book here, right, which is just, I have pages for all the different pairs, and when I'm looking at somebody's chart, if I'm studying a writer or a philosopher, or a poet, celebrity, comedian, whatever, I just make a note of like which people have which natal aspects in my little book. So it'll be good to make that to do a collaborative version of that that's much more comprehensive and has a lot more going on, and to pool our resources in that way, because I'm sure everybody has their own little system for keeping track of which people, especially the writers or the artists that are important to you personally. You kind of you really get to know their charts.
And this is a kind of a cool way. I sell this at cost. It's about $8 on Amazon, or $7.30 or something. And it's got chapters for all the planetary pairs, which you can just write in your insights and collect them. So yeah, anyone has any insights like that and would like to be part of it, let us know.
Awesome.
So I want to throw something out, just talking about the Mars Uranus, and then also Mercury is moving into square that Mars Uranus conjunction that we're coming into. So yesterday, right in my neighborhood, and I live in a very peaceful place, right? Very kind of, nothing ever happens here. There's all this crazy police activity, cops out there with like guns drawn, like right outside my place. And apparently there was a high-speed chase, and the guy, like, zoomed in, like, ran out of the car, broke into a place, like broke out the window, ran out the other side. And it's a very Mars Uranus kind of a thing, right? And like I actually asked my partner, I told her about it when she got home. I was like, there was this high-speed chase. Pop quiz, what astrological aspect do you think is going on right now? And she hadn't been looking at the transits or anything. She's like, Mars Uranus. It's like, bingo. Wow. Like this is the kind of thing that you can do when you understand the flavor of the planets, like I've been talking about. And why like this encyclopedia is going to be so amazing is because like this stuff actually is predictable when you like Rick Tarnas talks about, right? Like things are archetypally predictable in astrology, not necessarily concretely predictable. So you can't, it's like you can't predict, say that when there's a Mars Uranus aspect, there's going to be a high speed chase in your neighborhood, but you can turn it the other way and go, there was a high speed chase in my neighborhood. I wonder if there's a Mars Uranus aspect going on right now, and then look it up and it's likely to be, right? Mm-hmm. Also with the same alignment, I was talking to a friend, somebody who I'm in grad school with, who was writing a paper. She was in a class where she was studying archetypal astrology, and she was writing a paper on an artist. I forget the name of this artist, but she was kind of telling me about her life and asking me about some of the correlations that she'd made with her birth chart and everything. And there was this one particularly productive period of her life where where she was just working all the time and like put out most of her output, and she worked in like woodcuts and everything. And anyway, the woman who I was talking to described it to me as like, she was like, it was like she was working like Edward Scissorhands during that time, just like, and I was looking at the transits that she had, and she had Mercury, Mars, Uranus. And then I was like, all right, I wonder if Johnny Depp has an alignment of Mercury, Mars, Uranus. He has Edward Scissorhands, right? So I pull up his chart and he does, right? I think it's a T square or like a conjunction and a square, something like that. And so, but think about how perfect it is. Okay, what, like, how did I arrive at that, right? Like Mars has all that physical activity, right? Uranus kind of hyperactivates it and brings in these levels of like genius inspiration and just uncontrollable like revving up of the energy. Mercury brings in, you know, it can bring in anything to do with thinking to like manual stuff, manipulation with the hands. So Edward Scissorhands, sharp objects, Mars, moving at high speed, and it's your hands. Like it's a perfect little archetypal fit. And it's just so cool because when you take that step back and you kind of taste the flavor of it, as I've been saying, you see like how that artist, I wish I could remember her name, you know, she was experiencing the transit. The woman who I was talking to chose those words. It made me think of Johnny Depp. Somebody cast Johnny Depp in the role of Edward Scissorhands. You see the way all of this fits together, and it's just like, whoa.
Yeah, that's amazing.
You know,
You know, like a person could write a great book just about their transits for one day or for a week. If you were a sensitive person and just walking down the street, the things you would notice corresponding to different transits, like James Joyce Ulysses took place in one day, right? I think the whole novel, something like that. It's fascinating, you know, the things you think about, what you feel, what you synchronistically attract towards you, selectively perceive. And, you know, it's endlessly fun sort of matrix or grid through which to enjoy reality.
Yeah. I also
really
had a dream, Alex, where I often have dreams where I'm driving a car and I don't know how to drive in real life. Right? I don't have a license. I've never learned. And generally these dreams, I'm kind of plodding along, and at some point I remember that I don't know how to drive. And I'm here in the UK, so it's not an automatic either. You know, I'm driving a stick, and at some point it's like, oh no, I have to change gear. Now I'm really in trouble. You know, which one is the clutch and all that. So that's a normal dream for me. But I was having a dream during this Mars Uranus conjunction where I was driving. That didn't happen at all. I was driving a Lamborghini and I was being chased, and I was making all kinds of incredible turns, driving through narrow alleys that were just wide enough for the car to go down. And it was, literally the high speed car chase that you're referring to was also, playing out in my unconscious.
That's so funny. Mars Uranus and Mars Jupiter, to a lesser extent, often correspond to dreams where you're like a sports hero. I've had dreams where I was like making amazing plays in hockey. And then when I wake up, I realize, I actually have no talent.
Yeah.
I can't actually skate very well. I'm not a good hockey player.
Yeah.
But as far as you're on it, you get that sort of BPM-4 triumphant feeling inflected through the Mars archetype of sports. And those are fun dreams, or
Yeah.
flying dreams, or gliding.
It's funny you say that. I had a dream either last night or the night before where I was playing basketball and I was suddenly and very easily able to dunk the ball, and it was like, oh yeah, I mean, I don't know why I wasn't able to do this before, and everyone was duly impressed, and then I think today I was like scrolling through Facebook or something and I saw a basketball video come up, and in my mind I was like, oh yeah, there was that time I was able to dunk the. Oh no, it was a dream. That was a dream. So, but there you go. So these are now the transits for, about a week from today. I guess not too much has changed. And anything should I move them on by another week and we can see, or do you want to make any other comments?
Well, there's also that Venus opposite Pluto that we're in right now, and that's going into next week also. I guess I wasn't thinking about this one when I decided to watch Fatal Attraction last night, but there you go. Yeah, so Venus, planet of love and relationships, Pluto, planet of all that is dark and intense and obsessive and powerful and potentially transformative, right? Interestingly, Glenn Close, right, in Fatal Attraction, Glenn Close is born with a Venus opposite Pluto, I believe, on her ascendant descendant. And really, well, who else has Venus Pluto? I believe both John Hamm and January Jones, the stars of Mad Men, both have Venus Pluto. Britney Spears has Venus Pluto. You find this, like, what I think that the kind of core thing that Venus Pluto tends to point to is like taking you down to that place where you feel like so vulnerable and so potentially unlovable in relationship. And I think everybody's got that somewhere, right? It's like the darkness that being faced with the question of love, like, can pull you into, that you find kind of through all of these different people that I just either their roles, I don't know about their personal lives, but certainly in the roles that they play in film and television, or like what's gone on with Britney Spears and the way that she was kind of like used for her sexuality, and then like her money taken by her father and kind of made into this to play the role of a mentally ill person, and kind of the gaslighting effect and everything that went on with her, that there's this like kind of like a deep crisis of personal value thing, because Venus is also related to what's my self-worth, essentially. But the flip side of it, it's not just being pulled into the vortex of horror forever through relationship, it's being healed and transformed, Beauty and the Beast style, right?
Yeah, super interesting. I love movies like that. Another one I love from the 90s was The Hand That Rocks the Cradle with Rebecca De Mornay.
I remember that name, but I don't know if I've seen it.
I just looked her up. Sun, Venus, Pluto, and Leo. Wow, is she good in that? And it's sort of a femme fatale. She's the femme fatale again, just like Glenn Close is. That's great. She was in Guilty as Sin too with Don Johnson, and he's a homme fatale, and he has Venus, Pluto. And that's a fantastic movie. Yeah. So, fun to watch those kind of shows during these transits.
I guess the mythological one that stands out with Venus Pluto, Alex, you kept talking about being pulled down. It kept making me think about the Persephone myth. You know,
Yeah.
it's that sort of I guess there can be stuff that comes up around that with our, you know, potentially the transformation of our relationship to or concept of youth and beauty, you know, and the sense that Persephone in the myth before she gets you know, pulled down into Hades is this perfect young beauty who's being protected, kind of protected from aging, is one way to interpret it. Like stopped from maturing. Um, and obviously we don't want to overly glorify Hades like role in the myth, but there's something in there about like being willing to go through the transformation of maturing, like coming to fruition, claiming our dark side, or like doing the kind of maturation work of integrating the shadow, you know, and not being afraid that that's going to somehow spoil like what's beautiful or attractive or worthy about us.
Yeah, good point. Hey, I got something interesting to mention. Two dramatic elections in Europe just happened.
Hey.
Congratulations to the UK. You know, left wing, right wing, they both have their shadows, right? Everybody needs to do inner work and to cooperate with everyone else. And, you know, the moderate majority is kind of what makes civilization possible. I consider myself sort of center left, you know, but I'm, you know, there's extremism on both sides. But you know, I've been thinking that this great Uranus trine Pluto that we're in for 10 years, 8 more years, that's being supercharged right now by Mars. And you know, Jupiter is still in trine with Pluto as well, if you know, use Rick's wider orbs. And it the effect of this trine, because trines are so stable, is to bring things back into equilibrium. And it's like when you see those clips of those missiles coming out of a submarine out of the ocean, and they kind of wobble a little, and then they find they're true, and then they just go. I think that's what's happening. You know, that Saturn Pluto of 2018 to 2021 really, you know, messed up humanity. That was a great dividing transit, a compressing, constricting, sort of othering kind of energy, you know, with all the conspiracy theories and so on. And I think that this Uranus trine Pluto is really going to now start to get some traction and move things forward and make some progress. And I think we're really feeling that now. There's been a definite tendency toward far right governments, right? You know, like Trumpism, and then, you know, Hungary and Turkey and Poland and so on. And so this, you know, Britain just had a landslide Labour victory. And then in France, the left wing, which does also include some extremist left elements, has formed a coalition with the Center Party, and they've managed to block the far right wing party from power. So that's pretty good news. So I'm sort of seeing it in those terms.
Yeah. I personally, I was always hoping that the election would happen earlier than later in the year. You know, while we're still kind of riding out the coattails of the Jupiter Uranus conjunction. So yeah, I'm happy that Labour have got elected. You know, we can. Many people here on the left in the UK will criticize Keir Starmer and the Labour Party for essentially dragging the Labour Party kind of into the centre, or maybe even the centre right. You know, he said a lot of very socially conservative things in order to in order to win this election. But you don't really win elections in this country without saying a lot of socially conservative things. Unfortunately, they're also going to be still burdened with the same financial situation that the previous government was burdened with, and are basically bound to also institute a kind of economically conservative fiscal policy. So there's something Saturn Neptune about all of this. It's like there is a kind of victory for the left, but it's also, it's a very moderate. Like nobody on the left is really celebrating this in the UK. We're happy that the Tories are gone. They were a shambles at this point. Almost everyone agrees. And yeah, but there's a feeling that any meaningful change is gonna take a long time, and it's gonna be a slow process. Keir Starmer's acceptance speech was interesting, from that Saturn Neptune perspective, all about service. Returning the Labour Party to service, and bringing back an attitude of service to government, which to me has a very kind of a sober, yet a kind of Saturn Neptune, in that he's being very serious and taking a very sober tone, but also talking about placing the government in service to people, which I feel is bringing in the Neptune. So it doesn't, to me personally, doesn't feel like something to massively celebrate, even though I've been hoping for the demise of the Tory government since the day they were first elected. But there you go. It's better than it was, so we'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very Saturn Neptune thing, is that the way that I feel with things like this, it's like any little scrap of something that isn't the worst fucking case scenario, I'm like, thank you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna get down on the ground and kiss the ground, like, okay, we didn't completely destroy ourselves today.
We're all just hoping that this is a massive Trojan horse, that Keir Starmer has built the most elaborate Trojan horse for the left, to just get power. And now that he has the power, he's gonna start doing all sorts of very progressive things, which he's given no indication that he was ever planning to do. So, well, fingers crossed.
Something's been on my mind, because I've been kind of like looking at the whole sweep of time from, we had the 2010s were basically colored by the Uranus-Pluto square, right? And so it was starting with the Arab Spring and the Occupy movements and all of that, right on through to Me Too, Black Lives Matter, all of the social unrest, and the kind of just reckoning with all the shadows of injustice and everything, and the kind of mass empowerment to move in a progressive direction. But then really coming to a head around the time of COVID with Saturn Pluto, in just this extreme splitting that we really haven't healed. It's like that extreme splitting into like hardcore ideological left and hardcore ideological right, and ne'er the twain shall meet. Kind of going through that whole process, now coming out into, well, then we had Saturn Uranus, right, where kind of following Saturn Pluto, when things really got all kind of twisted up in terms of the conspiracy theories and the kind of anarchist, right-wing anarchists and fascist liberals, and like that whole weird mess. And now we're coming into this place of Saturn Neptune, where there's this kind of deflated sort of, it's like the big wave has come and crashed, and like all the debris is up there, and now it's like the slowly pulling out and showing the wreckage kind of a thing. And that's kind of the way that I feel with it. However, I also see a potentially positive development in the whole thing, because, you know, a lot of us experienced during COVID, yeah, it was all this insanity going on in the world around us, and in our personal lives, and being locked down, and, you know, facing fear of death, and all of that sort of thing. And yet, for a lot of people, it was a hugely awakening time. Like, I know for me personally, and many of my friends, it was like what happened during COVID was necessary to bring me to a new level of understanding of who I even am, and what reality is, and what's possible to be, right? Also, a kind of, I think, a sense of the collective dimensions of human consciousness becoming much more palpable for many more people. A sense of our that like we actually are kind of tapped into this bigger mind. And I think that, you know, even some of the ugliest developments that have gone on, right? Like the whole idea of alternative facts, which was coined at the last Saturn Neptune alignment, the square in 2016, or you know, just the alternate reality bubbles that people live in. This is another kind of Saturn Neptune thing, that if we can't agree on basic facts, right? If we no longer have that to establish our basis of like commonality and like humanity together, and functionality together, then like what do we have, right? Some people would say nothing, but I think that it just pushes us to a place of deeper compassion in ourselves, and deeper centering in ourselves, that we have to find, or else, you know. And anyway, these are some thoughts I've been having.
I love the image of the tsunami rolls in, and now it's rolled out, leaving wreckage and debris, and now we're picking up the pieces. And humans are kind to each other in disaster situations. You know, and you notice that in sessions as well. It's a kind of a artificially created crisis that you put yourself into in these sessions, and then you realize that, you know, people will take care of you in those situations. If you moan and complain every hour of every day, they might get sick of it. But in that therapeutic situation, people are there for each other. And yeah, you know, left and right, you know, if you see if someone's had an accident or hurts themselves, you're gonna help them. And that transcends all ideologies. And I'm feeling that a little bit too. It's kind of like, all right, you know, we had that experience, and we all got to show our flags of whatever stripe they were, you know, and now it's like, okay, let's just get along. There was kind of a sobering up period, as John said. Yeah.
I wonder, do you know if Michael Stipe has a Saturn Neptune anywhere? Everybody hurts.
I'll check it out.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
It seems likely.
STIPE.
Losing my religion. Everybody hurts.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah,
STIP.
it's coming up here. Yeah.
Sun, Saturn, sextile, Neptune.
Wow. Nice. Well, that's a good triad right there.
Yeah. He's still pushing that elephant up the stairs.
Yeah. Well, that's
But yeah,
good.
you know, you were talking, John, about that, the emphasis on service, right? I think that's one of the things that it's like, you know, you can talk about Saturn, Neptune, and talk about like, okay, spiritual discipline, right? Like do your meditation practice, right? Or like be of service, or be compassionate, right? But these are kind of like injunctions, like thou shalt, right? Just also a very Saturn, Neptune thing. But I find that a lot of times when Saturn, Neptune really, when I feel into it, it kind of forces me to discover the reason moral codes have been created, like the reality that morals approximate. You know what I mean? Like it's not that like you can talk about like, okay, this is a good thing to do. You should be of service, right? But if you're thinking, okay, I should be of service, I should go do something good, right? It's coming from a mental place that isn't authentic necessarily. I find that Saturn Neptune can bring you to that place of authenticity where you realize like, oh, it's almost like a scientific law here that like I just have to act in this way to be well, right? I have to give in order to get what I really want. If I'm just focused on getting what I really want, I will never be happy. Those are the kind of realizations that we can get with Saturn Neptune.
Yeah, that's cool. And just the Sun, Saturn, Neptune, and be sure we make a note of that for the encyclopedia. Sting has the triple conjunction. I'm the king of pain. So yeah, and then Edison, of course.
King of pain. Sun is the king. I love it.
Yeah. And then Edison said genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. He had Sun, Saturn.
Yeah, I mean, in my book of like people who have which aspects people have, a lot of amazing people on the Saturn Neptune page. Jeff Buckley, Arvo Part, the composer, and John Luther Adams, some of my favorite composers, and then Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela. Bring it back to service. Both have Saturn Neptune, and the Saturn Neptune cycle is very important in both of their lives. And then Freud and Darwin both have it. Ursula Le Guin and Octavia Butler, Franz Kafka and Mary Oliver, Khalil Gibran, some of my favorite writers and poets. So there's it's like it seems to denote like a willingness to get serious, that is kind of necessary, in order to do a certain type of really meaningful activity, and that can be expressed in a wide variety of different like arenas in life. But
the divine inspiration kind of floods inside our beings, and with Saturn Neptune, it's a very fine, thin stream, and you have to get down to that size inside yourself, that quiet place, in order to catch the drops as they come out. With Jupiter Neptune, it's more like a big flood that tempts you from every direction with prosperity and abundance, and I'm going to manifest everything. Every vision is going to come true, So Saturn Neptune is more about, spirituality by being humble and modest and so on. I want to say something about this, a little more about this this Uranus Pluto that's hyperactivated right now with Mars. It'll maybe next time, why don't we look at Biden's transits for this terrible debate performance last week? My God, the blessing of it was the blessing was that it was so bad that I'm sure he will pull out. I just don't. His party won't let him stay in power. They're just being nice to him because he's such a good man. He's such a kind-hearted man. And I was, who are the replacements? And my first choice was Gavin Newsom, governor of California. I think he could clean Trump's clock if he wanted to, and if he had the opportunity. But it looks like it will be Kamala Harris. And I really liked her when she ran against Biden, for the Democratic nomination 5 years ago. She I don't know. I think she's going to rise to the occasion, and I think she could win. I'd like to see some polls on that. But can you imagine what a Uranus-Pluto breakthrough that would be if she won the election? I don't want to, because Trump could win. Right now, Trump is going to win if something doesn't change. I'm convinced, most people are convinced of that. But if she won, imagine the breakthrough that would represent, and Trump would immediately become insignificant. He would have no influence. Adam Kinzinger said the other day on CNN that in 10 years, no one will admit that they ever liked Trump. I really believe that. So I hope that best case scenario will come to pass.
As ever,
Yeah.
I'm buoyed by your optimistic attitude, Renn, and and I hope that what you say comes to pass. Yeah, I can't follow U.S. politics too closely, otherwise I go insane. So I'll leave them to it.
But I kind of feel the same way. I mean, you know, it's like, I know I ain't voting for Trump. I don't need to follow every little movement of, you know, like I do feel like there's this way that the whole creation, and again, this is another Saturn Neptune thing, right? You see how much the spin factor, the creation of, you know, the separation and the you know, here's an image for you to chow on over here, and here's an image for you to chow on over here, and let's just mix everybody up and keep everybody kind of snowed by their different perspectives. Like I find that I really feel that the media, you know, any media at this point, mainstream, non-mainstream, like it's all serving some kind of, I wouldn't say like a conspiratorial agenda, but it's caught in this soupy swirl, right? There's this, you just feel all of the fear and anxiety and distrust and everything that's just flowing through the collective psyche right now. Everybody's affected by it, right? And the media is one of the prime propagators of it. And so it's like, my policy in following the news is like, yeah, I want to stay informed, I want to know what's going on, but like if I stay too closely on it, then I start to engage emotionally with it, I start to get wrapped up into it, and I don't think that I can actually do my best that way. So,
Yeah,
you know, it's like with the debate, like I knew, like, I just felt like before that debate, okay, what purpose is this debate going to serve, right? It's not going to change anybody's mind about Trump. It Biden might do something stupid, and then people will start going crazy about what happened. What Biden? Well, what happened? Biden was a disaster, right? And so now everybody's freaking out about it, and it to me, it's just a big circus. It's a big circus all the time, you know.
yeah. I think a major theme for me of this alignment, if I just take these out, um, you know, of Saturn and Neptune floating around the midpoint of this Pluto Uranus trine. Um, you know, I feel like we're going to be called upon on many occasions over the next few years to really be considerate about the information that we consume, like the effect that it's having on us. You know, this kind of, you know, you can see the internet, you know, as a kind of Uranus Pluto thing, where it's a kind of the kind of rapid movement forward into technological advance, you know, and with Neptune coming in there, it shows us the element of our digital environments that creates a fantasy world, you know,
Yeah.
an immaterial world that we're invited to put all of our attention into. And as Saturn sits conjunct Neptune, you know, I think we're going to see the problematic side of that. So this is not just about politics, but it does certainly speak to, you know, the nature of our engagement in the political world. Like what's really worthy of our attention?
Yeah.
What kind of environments are worthy of our attention? Human attention is a sacred resource, you know, and it should, many of the environments that are being provided for our attention are simply not worthy of it, and it's clear that the mainstream media, it's been clear for a while, is a kind of digital environment that's not worthy of our attention for the most part. We need to be informed, so it's a bit of a catch-22, but they don't respect our attention. And as you're pointing out as well, Alex, it's not just the mainstream media. It's really any kind of media, social media, you know, podcasts like this one. Are we above it? Probably not, you know. It's up to people to decide, you know, what's worthy of putting your attention on it, and what effect does it have on you, and yeah, what if we're kind of feeling ourselves being trapped, or entrapped in a digital environment, you know, it's worth seeing what our options are for getting out of that as and when they come up.
I think you guys might be above it, but I'm not. And I was wondering if I could quickly show the Biden transits here. Super interesting.
Yeah, let's
Okay, so this is approximate time of the debate. A week ago, June 27th. It's interesting that he said he was over-prepared. He's got transiting Mercury conjunct his Jupiter here. This is Biden's chart here in the center, and then the transits. And he said he was over-prepared, and it looked like he was, when he was stumbling on that healthcare question, and he mentioned COVID and you know, it's all this jumble of stuff. He had too many things in his mind, which could be the shadow of the Mercury Jupiter. Normally, you might expect a you know, eloquent debate on there. But another thing that really stands out, he's got Saturn here at the bottom of his chart. That's not the best, you know, for putting yourself out into the public world. It's more like taking care of your roots, and maybe, you know, asking yourself hard questions, that kind of thing. He's got transiting Saturn trining his Mercury. Normally, that might be good for, you know, clear, short, organized statements, but Saturn trine Mercury, even with the trine, can have a constricting effect on the mind. There was a Mercury trine Saturn in the sky as well. Also his comment that he was over-prepared. I think he had been kind of drilled with a lot of different information and so on. This Jupiter conjunct Saturn can be this sort of meeting of a lot of something, meeting sort of consequences, or, you know, it's too much to go through the whole, you know. Yeah, anything stand out for you guys?
Well, it's interesting just seeing that Jupiter right there on the descendant and on his Saturn. You know, to me, yeah, I mean, Jupiter, of course, it amplifies things, right? So it can really bring the, you know, I think of Saturn on the descendant as kind of like a wall that he's coming up against, right? Just he's hitting the wall, and Jupiter's saying like now, but at the same time, it might actually be a gift for him. You know, he might actually find, if he just steps back, it's like, oh, thank God, this is a much better thing for everybody, including me. You know, I don't know. Obviously, I'm kind of reading something into that, but
yeah. The Pluto opposition Jupiter too. It's a little bit out of orbit. Pluto's moving back in, so it's still in opposition. Is that sort of drive, right? I mean, he was so wildly successful in 2020, you know, beat Trump by, you know, it's what, 7.5 million votes. And, you know, he might need some feedback from the people around him to get him to get off of that sort of drive, that success drive train of the Pluto Jupiter. But he's a very Uranian guy. Look at this charismatic Sun Venus opposition Uranus. You know, that's bright smile that he likes to shine out there, the sunglasses, and hey Joe.
Yeah, the aviators.
Yeah. Hey Jack. You know. So
yeah, totally.
Yeah. So I'll stop sharing there. That's enough on that?
You say as much as you want. I didn't watch the debate, So I'll refrain
Well,
from making
there was
astrological comments.
honestly, the most just egregious moment in the debate was that when they were arguing about their golf scores. It was just like, what an embarrassment, man. Like Trump throws out this bait and then he takes it. Biden takes the bait, and it just really looked like two little schoolboys just having a pissing contest kind of a thing. I wonder what the transits say about that.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I don't know, maybe Mars Uranus kind of coming on stream there. Oh, Mars opposition is natal Mars.
I was
Yeah,
going to say
That's perfect for that.
yeah.
It's kind of like that scene in Bertolucci's 1900, where the padrone and the poor guy who have been fighting all their lives, it flashes forward like 80 years, and they're both old men, and it's like a metaphor for the left wing and the right wing fighting in Italian politics or world politics. That's a great classic movie by Robert De Niro, is in that, Gerard Depardieu. And that's kind of what we got here a little bit, Two old guys. Maybe it archetypally signals the end of that phase. I mean, ideology has been a horrible blight and a curse in human history, and we need, I think we're moving into more like a holotropic worldview, where it's going to be more about, are you doing self-exploration? That's the way forward now. It's not trying to cinch your ideology forward at the expense of some other person's ideology, So maybe that's what's happening.
I think that we're in it's funny because, like, I'm sure if we could just step back and see a zoomed out perspective and like not need to see everything happen within the short span of our own lifetime, like we'd be able to look at this with like a lot of like, oh, okay, yeah, okay, I see what's going on here, right? But the fact is, like, we're in it. Right? But I agree with you that, like, I think that a big thing that COVID, the 2010s into COVID, out of COVID, really showed us that we're in a time of like system collapse, right? Like the systems that we've had just don't work any longer to align to kind of support the way life wants to actually move, right? And one of the best definitions I ever heard of evil was that basically it's like a form. It's like when form and life force like come out of alignment, and the form doesn't want to change to allow the life force to flow, then it holds on and becomes increasingly more distorted and trying to hold on. And I kind of feel that that's where we are with our systems now, these ideological based systems, or just nations as they're currently constructed, and the whole deal. It's like it doesn't really serve like where people are at, actually. Like, you can feel this kind of I certainly can feel an evolution in humanity that wants to come forth, but the things we have in place won't allow it to happen yet, and who knows how long it will take. And I really do see Trump and Biden kind of, it's like these guys as the two options for American president. It's like it just kind of speaks to the staleness of what we're coming from and how over it is.
Yeah, that is how it looks from my perspective also. So yeah,
very well said. Very well said.
Maybe we should talk about the transits once Mars gets up to the point where it's going to square the Saturn Neptune conjunction.
I just looked at that. I think it's probably July 30th. with a wide orb, or the first few days in August. So this is the Mars, Saturn, Neptune triad, Mars square Saturn, Neptune. And both Mars, Neptune and Saturn, Neptune can have a bit of a challenging side in psychedelic journeys. To have them both at the same time, we just urge caution at this time. Don't take unnecessary risks. You can still have worthwhile experiences. I've used this metaphor before, like camping in the rain. Just make sure you have enough time and supplies and support. If you're running groups at this time and you have a high ratio of journeyers to sitters or facilitators, you might want to bring in some extra support. People might need supportive physical contact if they ask for that. People have deprivation issues. It's really important to give them that. Sessions might go longer. As always, Saturn can delay the emergence of material and kind of prolong it. So, don't try to end things too soon. If you're in a session, and this goes through most of August, right? If you're in a session in August and you get into a dark place, just lie there and let yourself feel it. Feeling it consumes the negative energies and emotions from your system. There are other positive things happening too, but that's a bit of a caution for sessions in August.
Yeah. I'll add as well that we talked a lot about Saturn Neptune in this episode. If you haven't heard episode 2 of this podcast, there's an extensive presentation about Saturn Neptune that I gave in that episode as well as a slide in that presentation that has all the dates for when Mars is in hard aspect to Saturn and Neptune. So if you're looking for an easy way to get that information, you can just screenshot that from that episode. That's still available. My metaphor was always like it's like going to a fancy restaurant. If you have when you have a stomach bug, it's like you can make a different reservation, if you're not going to enjoy it. But yeah, you can still have good experiences, like Renn says, but it definitely makes sense to work with lower doses and maybe choose entheogens that don't last as long, especially if you don't have access to the kind of support that you might want in terms of having sitters or having ideal sitters.
I find that you were talking earlier about the way attention is being co-opted and everything, and how that's something that we're really facing with Saturn Neptune. I really feel like in ordinary life, in politics, and also in psychedelic sessions, and psychedelic sessions more than anything will really teach you about attention, about what you put your attention on, and the manner in which you put your attention on it can change everything. And I think anybody who's ever done a psychedelic knows what it's like to be in a super dark place and then just like change rooms and like what just happened, or whatever, look at a flower, or like the sun suddenly comes out, or something like that, and it changes everything, right? So I think we talk about set and setting, but there is I find, particularly with the Mars Neptune, that the challenge with Mars Neptune energies in all regards, and especially in a psychedelic session, is that there's this kind of invasion factor of like things trying to jut in at you that you don't want to come, and it's like you don't feel like you have the boundaries available to you to keep it out. And so these resistances build up, but a kind of paranoia can come in, especially with the Saturn. And so, it's like if I were to do it, I would want to really have certain things at my disposal, like remind myself to return to my breath, or to feeling energy and moving energy in the body to get it out of the mind. Sometimes I find sort of when I'm having difficulty in a session, if I just move from if I'm feeling it at a really mental or emotional level, to like move to a body level or energetic level and feel it from there, it can help maybe dislodge some of the stuck points. So,
Yeah.
Good point. So yeah, good luck in August, everybody. And we're not sure if we're going to do a podcast at the beginning of the month or of August, but if not, happy journeys.
Just to add to what Alex was saying as well, he was talking about the Mars Neptune dynamics. In terms of the Mars Saturn dynamics, the problem can be that with Mars Saturn, it's an energy that can tend to like reinforce the boundaries of the ego. I certainly notice that just in daily life when I have Mars Saturn transits. I am it's a bit harder for me to just let go, surrender to what's happening in the moment. So that's maybe a bit less available to me, and that in sessions is a capacity that I lean on heavily. And it's not always bad if you're having certain types of experiences in sessions to feel in control. That can be good. But in general, if a session if difficult material is emerging, it's generally better to try to surrender to it, and let it occur. And Mars Saturn, it can have the effect of, that feeling of offense is the best form of defense, or that kind of need to keep a boundary up. You need to keep a kind of sharp boundary up. So if you are doing sessions, you are doing medicine work of some kind, and you notice that that's a pattern, then it can just be good another thing to come back to and remind yourself of is to hold an intention to surrender to what's coming up, and to allow it. And so if you strongly kind of choose that, and articulate that for yourself ahead of a session, then that can help to be something to come back to.
I agree, and I think that sometimes there's this, because of the way Saturn, particularly Mars and Saturn work, right? It's like sometimes I find we need to build bridges to the point of surrender, because ultimately surrendering is it, right? But there's I find that when I have the hardest time surrendering, it's usually because there's something in my body that it's like at a very physical level, or physical or energetic level, that like something is holding on, that even if I want to let go, I desperately want to let go, and I'm saying I surrender. It's like that last little bit that isn't surrendering. It's like, well, what is that? Then I go, and maybe all I need to do is just like breathe and tense my legs and let them go, and then boom, it'll happen. But it's just by putting the attention in a more physical place. I find that, like, it's like Mars Saturn can be very ego reinforcing, or it can be, I find that it's best worked at on a physical level almost. It's like, I think Renn, like you've talked about, like you recommended like isometrics for that, right? Like, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, those are really good points. Yeah. Just so great doing this with you guys. Wow. I'm just, amazed to hear everything you say. That's remarkable. Speak the same language, and that you both have done so much studying and also inner exploration. It's a remarkable combination that Rick, really demonstrated. And
Well, thank you very much for listening, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as we enjoyed having it. A few things to mention just before we sign off. Myself and Renn and Alex, we all practicing astrologers, offer readings and counseling and coaching in various different ways. You can find links to all of our websites right down below. This September, I'm going to be running a new course that's called Soul Work. Kind of a combination of a lot of things, some group dialogue practices, some contemplative practices, some breath work, some presentations, and evocative material of my own on the different planetary archetypes. And it's going to be a really exciting opportunity to participate in a community of like-minded people. If you're into this kind of stuff, and you would like to participate, if that piques your interest, again, the links will be down below. There's also going to be a free workshop this Sunday, so that's the 14th of July, 6 p.m. UK time, so that's 10 a.m. Pacific and 1 p.m. Eastern. Fill in your own time zone if you're in a different place. Yeah, you're very welcome to come along and get a feel for what it's going to be like, the kind of stuff that we're going to be doing, and how it's going to feel to be doing it. Also pleased to announce that my Oracle deck, the Archetypal Astrology Oracle, which I've been working on for a long time, is going to be published in this coming January, so still a way off, but it's available to pre-order on Amazon. Again, the links will be right there for you to find. I do encourage you to check out the websites of Alex and Renn, see what they're up to. There are many exciting offerings. And yeah, I think that's all for now. So thank you again for listening, and goodbye.